What's up, everybody? Back at it again. This is BLACKFIRE-RISING, aka Faya. Got my man Kanan,
What's up?
Kanan Powers. Hey man, so we got a couple topics we're gonna talk about today. One is something that they've been calling the Illinois Purge. I mean, there's been a lot of hype about it on social media. Um, a few mentions in mainstream, but it's basically the end of the cash bail system in Illinois. Next up, we're also going to talk about the passing of the Elizabeth.
I object.
The Queen Elizabeth. That's also something that's been trending. And also, man, what was there something else you wanted to bring up today?
Yeah, we were just going to touch on some of the sex trafficking scandals that's been going on throughout the country. I feel like we should give spend a little time on that and talk about how it affects the Black community and just what it means to the country as a whole.
Okay, cool. Facts. So yeah, I guess we'll lead off with this. The Queen is dead. And man, not to sound too opinionated about it, but goodness, man. I mean, I've been following a couple of the brothers online. Like shout out to Tariq Nasheed and New Breed YouTube channels, man. I'll shout them out here in the title.
Mhm.
But they were talking about it, man. And on Tariq's channel, he was showing across Africa, mainly across Africa and some places in Jamaica, especially in the Caribbean. You had a lot of Black people, I mean, truly mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth, man. Like, I mean, real tears and missing her and sort of the take me instead.
Mhm.
Man, it just ironically, man, I don't know. I mean, given what we know about Britain, the Queen's involvement in colonization, mass murder, man, I mean, what do you think about it when you got the the losers of that legacy like really mourning the passing of Queen Elizabeth, a symbol of colonialism?
Well, I mean, it just shows the disconnect when people ask questions like, "Why is history important? Why do we talk about these type of things?" To me, it just shows that there's a disconnect. These people either don't understand the history and how it impacts us today of what the queen has contributed to, or their queen has contributed to, um, or it just shows that the brainwashing is real. So it's one or the other, because there's no other explanation to have that level of grief for somebody who has done so much wrong to you and your people or people like you. It just don't make sense to me.
Right. It doesn't make sense to me either, man. And it's like you said, either they're ignorant of the history or they, don't care because in a way you have you can learn something, you can know the legacy of, colonialism and slavery and global racism that pushes Black to the bottom. But then also if you don't understand that, I guess, morally and emotionally, just knowing the history and knowing the facts, still it's not enough to make you really care, not in your heart and soul, man. And gosh, I don't see how a lot of Afrocentric people or so-called Black people around the globe, are mourning this passing, But that being
Yeah.
said, I do have something on it. I mean, if you had something else to say.
No, go ahead, because I'll be going all day.
Okay, cool, man. This is a statement from the EFF. It's an organization known as the EFF, and I will call this this is the exception. And this is an exceptional group. First off, the EFF, or the Economic Freedom Fighters, is a South African left wing to far left Pan-Africanist political party. It was founded by expelled former African National Congress Youth League President Julius Malema and his allies in 2013. And shout out to these brothers, man. This is what they had to say about the passing of the Queen. I will put a link to this online letter here, but I'm only going to sort of paraphrase from parts here. EFF statement on the death of Queen Elizabeth, Thursday, September 8th, 2022. Quote, the economic freedom fighters notes the death of Queen Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, the Queen of the United Kingdom and the ceremonial head of state of several countries that were colonized by the United Kingdom. Elizabeth ascended to the throne in 1952, reigning for 70 years as a head of an institution built up, sustained, and living off a brutal legacy of dehumanization of millions of people across the world. We do not mourn the death of Elizabeth because to us her death is a reminder of a very tragic period in this country and Africa's history. ... From 1811, ... Our interaction with Britain under the leadership of the British royal family has been one of pain and suffering, of death and dispossession, and of dehumanization of African people. We remember how Neely, I want to say Neely, it's spelled Nxele, Neely, how do they say it, died in the aftermath of the Fifth Frontier War, how King Hintsa was killed like a dog on the 11th of May, 1835, during the Sixth Frontier War, and had his body mutilated and his head taken to Britain as a trophy. Pause. Man, it's funny when you look at some of these historical documents and you can see sort of the predecessors and the commonalities that still exist in Eurocentric culture. The fact that they beheaded this man and brought his head back to Europe as a trophy. And when you think back about sort of the Darwinist scientists that would also run experiments and collect skulls and other parts of the earth and sort of put them on display, to the, you look at the folks now in this more politically correct age where that's not a real thing that they can do, but they've got deer heads and bearskin rugs and taxiderm squirrels and all this sort of stuff, man. And it's,
Right.
I just find it interesting, that sort of that bloodlust and that taxidermy nowadays and killing for sport and sort of keeping body parts for trophy, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
they keep it a part of that's when it's a part of the culture, they find a way to implement it and keep it around, keep that same idea living because a lot of those things are symbolic.
right. And the scary thing for me is that the same spirit, the same drive, the same warped sense of sort of a misguided hunting instinct, not to feed, but to sort of feed bloodlust. The sort of daunting thing to me is that when you look at people that just go out and hunt purely for sport and they bring back, heads of animals and have them taxidermed and stuff like this, stuffed and mounted on their wall, it's the same. To me, it's more of a domesticated version of a more savage time and of a more savage instinct that would do that to actual human beings. And so just like, you can bring an animal into your home, but they say somewhere deep, like a dog, for example, there's a wolf lurking somewhere deep within. And all it takes is sort of the right instincts to kick in, and then that animal could regress to its former state. What you got on that, man? I had just one or more, two paragraphs.
No, you could keep reading.
Facts. So skipping ahead again. This family plundered India via the East India Company, talking about Queen Elizabeth's quote unquote royal family. This family plundered India via the East India Company. It took over control and oppressed the people of the Caribbean islands. Their thirst for riches led to the famine that caused millions of people to die in Bengal, and their racism led to the genocide of Aboriginal people in Australia. skipping ahead. During her 70-year reign as queen, she never once acknowledged the atrocities that her family inflicted on native people that Britain invaded across the world. She willingly benefited from the wealth that was attained from the exploitation and murder of millions of people across the world. The British royal family stands on the shoulders of millions of slaves who were shipped away from the continent to serve the interests of racist white capital accumulation, at the center of which lies the British royal family. And in closing, they say, if there's really life and justice after death, may Elizabeth and her ancestors get what they deserve. Boom, drop the mic.
Mm-hmm.
That was a statement by economic freedom fighters, South African-based Pan-Africanist political party. So yeah, man, kind of makes me proud, and I think it's a ray of hope to see people, especially in the African diaspora, that are firmly grounded, where
Mm-hmm.
the pervasive culture, at least on at least on a common level in certain African states, some will say the majority of African states, is tribalism. But
Mm-hmm.
this sense of Pan-Africanism that's alive, at least in this instance, as exhibited by the EFF party, to me, I think it makes sense. It's logical.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main point, is like that's a logical response. That's how you should react. That's how this country will react if anybody passed away that supposedly caused harm to the country. Generally, you won't mourn that death the same way you would mourn the death of somebody who did good for the country. It's just common sense.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think it's good that they actually put that out there to let people know how, where they stand and why they stand that way. I mean, it was it was a lot of things about the queen that were controversial. I mean, just from the things that article mentioned, as well as just having stolen artifacts from Africa that had been looted, you know, for centuries. All the things that were never rightfully returned to the countries that they were stolen from. All of that was under the dictatorship or authority of that one person.
Right. The Queen Elizabeth. Man, and as a passing note, and I know we got to move on, but I wonder what that Meg, uh, that half sister, she came out and she made some sort of political statement, something to the effect of she never, once she got in the midst of the quote unquote royal family, that she became acutely aware of being a Black woman, and that it was either, she said something either to the effect of, it was the first time she ever felt like a Black woman, or she felt like a Black woman for the first time, or
Hmm.
something like that. But she was the woman that a lot of our sisters around here were running around celebrating, as a
Yeah.
symbol of transcending, I guess what ultimately would be Blackness, or some
Hmm.
kind of win for females, and well, particularly for Black females, even though she had never identified as Black personally. But I digress.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's another topic in itself. But really, the celebration comes, in my opinion, from just more of the material, like fantasy aspects of being accepted into a royal family as a biracial or Black woman, right? When you have a lot of Black women struggling with the idea of being accepted, right, as beautiful women, and then you see these women who don't identify as Black initially, um, get into any position of power or luxury, and then it's like the women the African American women in our country will kind of gravitate to that for all the wrong reasons, in my opinion. So
Right.
that's how I kind of look at that. Like that wasn't really a win for black women because let's be honest, um, even the ones that they present as black in those situations are barely black. They're not women that have normal traditional black characteristics. I'll put it that way.
Right. It's all aesthetics and the women and a lot of times our people we love to live vicariously through imagined characters and stuff. I mean, and like you said, I know that's probably another rabbit hole, but I think in the case of our women, it's strongly influenced by the legacy of feminism, where they imagine that they are in competition as independent members of the world and the black community, and that they're in competition firstly with us as black men.
Hmm.
And I think the black community as a whole has sort of taken on that immature, unrealistic, fantastical mindset. Like one of the phenomenons was, I think, the whole Black Panther craze. This was
Hmm.
literally a fictional character invented by two white males, uh, Marvel Comics, Stan Lee and I guess Jack Kirby, maybe, I'm not sure which one, but
Hmm.
literally dreamed up in the heads of white men, put into Africa, was very stereotypical. And I mean, all Marvel had to do was make a rendition of this fictional character from the archives of Marvel history, and black people lost their mind.
Hmm.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of
Yep.
millions, man. We
Yep.
spent, I mean us, hundreds of millions black folks spent when you count
Fully
up
invested.
ticket sales and costumes and my
Yep.
God, bro, and all fantasy.
All
But
fantasy fiction. Yeah, that's a big thing. I feel like I've had conversations about black people not being able to or just not willing to separate entertainment from reality, and how the Europeans actually entertainment becomes a reflection of their reality, right? So what they think when you watch entertainment, you're getting the idea of what the European mindset is because their entertainment is a reflection of their reality. And then we'll watch that same entertainment and not be able to differentiate reality from entertainment. So I think that you kind of touched on that just briefly with that statement.
right, escapism.
Yep. All right, so we're gonna just move it along a little bit. I wanted to touch on basically child protective services and sex trafficking and the connection between the two. Now that might throw people off a little bit, like, well, where's the connection between CPS and sex trafficking? Well,
Mm.
according to an article that I read in the Texas Tribune, there was recently a case where a CPS worker was actually encouraging young women to become prostitutes.
You don't say.
So they actually have a video of it. However, when I watched the video, most of it was bleeped out, but because it was a news article, um, I tried to find a video, raw footage. I couldn't find it, but there is a video of the CPS worker actually encouraging the girl to become a prostitute in order to get food.
Yeah, Jonathan. Now, earlier this year, a federal judge scorned Child Protective Services for making kids available for prostitution in the CPS system. Now we have a case where an employee with that state agency is actually encouraging prostitution of a 14-year-old child. Keisha Basley has 9 kids. She turned to Child Protective Services to help her with her 14-year-old daughter, who she says was running away and causing trouble at school.
My daughter told me that the worker had been telling her that she should do these things. So she said she decided to video her.
The child was asking the CPS worker for food because they're living in hotels throughout Texas. This is where they're locating these these children, the runaways, missing children, things like that. Um they have them in various hotels throughout this county, and the kids ask for food because they're being neglected, and the CPS worker actually told them, well, if you want food, then maybe you should become a prostitute.
Wow.
If I, me, the parent, was to do something like this to my child, I would be bashed. I would be called a horrible parent. I would lose my kids.
Get your tail to that room.
Basley filed a formal complaint with CPS.
This should not happen to girls in their care. This should not happen. This is unacceptable.
So the article
Oh.
kind of goes in. Go ahead.
No, maybe I'll wait till after you finish, man.
Yeah. So the article kind of touched on more in depth of what was going on. So an employee of the Texas contracted facility that's meant to care for female foster children who are victims of sex trafficking already were discovered to be trafficking the same children, according to a federal judge. 7 children in particular, ages 11 through 17, were victimized by 9 alleged perpetrators, according to the discussions held during an emergency court hearing called by the U.S. District Judge on a Thursday. So they don't have the date in this article. So this was they basically said an employee sent out this letter to a judge saying that it was inappropriate behavior happening where kids were actually being sexually abused in a facility where they were supposed to be rescued from sex trafficking. So they basically got sexually abused after being rescued from this in this facility of CPS workers. And they found out that there was no fast movement. Nobody came to investigate for about a month. So these kids were stuck in that condition for about 3 additional months for the investigation and everything to go through before there was any intervention. And they found out that it was more than one person. It was actually about, I believe, 10 different people throughout the system. And the most that they got out of this situation was the commissioner came to Texas and apologized to some of the families that this happened.
Wow.
So that was all, and they said that that was acceptable because these were just a few bad seeds. And I
Wow.
think we've heard that story before.
Wasn't
Go ahead.
wasn't the CPS, because I remember glimpsing either that same interview or article, but the worker that was first revealed to, was attempting to traffic this young lady or encourage her into prostitution, wasn't she a Black woman?
Correct. I believe so. That's what the video showed.
Yeah, the worker was
So
an adult Black female encouraging an underage Black female to basically turn tricks to not only sustain herself and her family, but I think the worker was also accused of basically pimping or being a
yeah.
madam, taking a cut from, setting up this young girl for this.
Now another thing that the article mentioned is that they were successfully doing that, and the money that they were getting from pimping these young girls out, they were using that money to buy drugs and alcohol for the children as well. So they
To
after they
keep
did
them, right.
yes. So I mean the story just got deep and dark real quick. However, we would expect CPS to say this was just a few bad seeds. We know that, and especially you talking about, you know, this was located in Texas. So once you put that into the factor of the racist history of Texas, majority of these girls being African American, and the people that get arrested probably will reflect African American, even though we know that the bigger picture is always more than that, right? So the people who
Right.
get penalized and get put on display as the problem, we know that these people are not head of these operations. Like if you still believe that, then you're just not paying attention. However, I think we can go further into how selling out is more than just not proclaiming that you're Black, but doing these type of things against your own people, knowing the conditions that we are in. Like, so these are young Black girls being coached into being prostitutes by other Black women in a culture that's embracing kind of this Cardi B, stripper to get money, Kim Kardashian type of lifestyle, where you kind of see that this is becoming a bigger problem.
Right. No value in virtue or moral
Hmm.
code. Wow,
Another,
man. So go ahead.
I was going to just touch on another case about how this is problematic. So in St. Paul, Minnesota, there was actually a case where a federal, actually at the time this person was working as a federal agent, but it's just a regular officer in St. Paul, I believe. But she was charged with tampering with the witness and had fabricated a sex trafficking ring and falsified testimony in court to a grand jury, basically as a part of this covert federal operation, right? So she was charged and they found her guilty. They said, yes, she did fabricate a sex trafficking ring of people. And throughout this process, 30 Somalian refugees were arrested and spent time in a federal prison, but they dismissed it because they said because she was working for a federal case that it was justified. But
Got you.
this sex trafficking ring of 30 Somalian men never exists. However,
Oh,
there's a yeah. So that's what this article is about, and I read this in the Final Call newspaper. This is basically a newspaper that is printed by the Nation of Islam, but the articles are real and they are verified articles. And I can read some of it just to give you some of the names. The officer name is Heather Wecker, which is Weyker. She was the one that was prosecuted in the lawsuit. The lawsuit alleged she fabricated a witness tampering charge because she was part of a federal task force at the time. The court found that in addition to the witness tampering charges, Officer Wecker likely had fabricated a non-existing sex trafficking ring and apparently falsified testimony in court to a grand jury, according to multiple federal court rulings in the news reports.
okay. Got you.
So yeah, just to kind of put it all out there, like this is definitely a problem, however you look at it.
Right.
Meanwhile, in Texas, there's actual sex rings and CPS that's not being investigated.
Right. Well, man, I think that that segues sort of into the last topic we were going to visit for this session. Did you have anything else
Nope,
on that?
nope. Just want to
Okay.
make a little awareness.
Well, yeah, well, speaking about, I guess I'd say planting evidence, fabricating stories and charges, and the whole nine, that segues into the topic of the end of the cash bail. I know you all have been probably, if you've been paying attention to social media, you've seen that it's been trending, this whole purge that's supposedly going to happen in Illinois. Chicago's one of the longstanding poster childs of crime and, Black debauchery and violence and everything. And so, it goes hand in hand with this sort of ideal of the purge that people are calling this. In actuality, Illinois is instituting what's called the SafeT Act. That's SAFE-T. And that SafeT Act, essentially what it purports to do is put an end to the cash bail system. So, bro, have you heard of this?
No, not much.
Okay, cool. Well, the cash bail system, just real quick, rewinding the fast forward, is a system that I have to admit has been problematic in the criminal and justice system, in the sense that it's basically if you get arrested and you have money, you can post bail. And if you don't have money, you can't post bail. So what winds up happening is If you go in, you get arrested for anything, say a cop accuses you of something and you get arrested, well, you're still accused, and pending an investigation and a sentencing and an outcome and all that, people would post bail while the investigation was ongoing. The problem is people that had money could bail out of jail, and they wouldn't have to spend time behind bars, especially if they got cleared of any wrongdoing. The problem comes in when you don't have money to post your bail, you wind up being in prison and sometimes these trials would be scheduled way out and keep getting postponed. It could be months, in some cases. I've heard it was even years. And people are waiting their trial and evidence, but they don't have the money to bail out. And so if you're poor, essentially you're serving a sentence by default, even though you could ultimately be found innocent. And oftentimes law enforcement would use that, and everybody from prosecutors to the beat cop, you could plant evidence on someone or accuse them knowing that they're going to be locked up for a while in the cash bail system. And this would often pressure people to take plea bargains as well. You plea bargain to a lower charge because you want to get out of jail. We'll just let you out, and you show up for your court date. So it was, in a lot of instances, it was what they say, a travesty of justice. That was the cash bail system, and that is what this allegedly, although the lawmakers are alleging that this will be a step in the direction of justice to eliminate the cash bail system. Social media hype is calling it a coming purge because it has been trumpeted as people that commit certain acts and crimes will no longer have to post cash bail. The system will be done away with. So consequently, millions of people will be let out in the streets. Additionally, some criminals that are currently locked up, I believe the number is about 400, will be released because they're in stasis, sort of not being able to make their bail. They do away with that system, they'd be out pending their trial. So, there was a list saying it could be second-degree murder, it could be threatening a public official, it could be squatting on someone's land and property, just all these crimes, kidnapping. I mean, they were throwing a lot out there, man. And it started to make me wonder if it was it seemed very politicized the way it was presented, and I suspected it of having a very strong conservative tilt to it. But man, if you want to give an opinion on that, I just have a couple quotes.
Oh man, that just sounds like I said, I don't know much about it. That sounds like something I would want to dig into a little more before making a concrete opinion about it. But at this point, I just feel like it's more to it than just letting people out just because the bail system was flawed somehow.
Right. Well, man, either will result in sort of an archaic people just committing crimes willy-nilly and sort of increased lawlessness, or it will, it could backfire. And well, I mean, on the malintentionality could backfire, and it could result in, say, more Black men returning to the neighborhoods and actually not being pressured to take plea bargains or, spend a bunch of time in jail. So, but quick here, we got the end of cash bail and more. What's in Illinois's SafeT Act? Okay, and this is selective paraphrasing. One of its many provisions will end cash bail, where a defendant is required to pay a percentage of the bail set by a judge to be released from prison, making Illinois the first state to do so. So this bill has 13 sponsors, including Springfield's own Representative Tim Butler, but no action has been taken since it was referred to the House Rules Committee. So it's set to go into effect on, I believe, January 1st. Was actually enacted February 22nd of 2021. So yeah, man. I mean, just when I first heard about it on social media, everybody was hyping it up, man. A few of the brothers, like, and shout out to them again, like Tariq, for example, New Breed. Oh man, it's the purge. It's about to be the Wild Wild West. People's gonna be out here committing crazy acts, and literally you could aggravated murder somebody, and they will let you go because they can't hold you pending a cash bond. And so it would be up to 48 hours before law enforcement could go after somebody for skipping bail. And by the time that happens, the person could drive to Alaska, they're saying, and all this, man. So, and I don't mean just the brothers, I mean the mainstream pundits, and white society as well. So, I mean, it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen if this would. I doubt it turns into a purge kind of situation, because even in the language here, it says that it's not that the person won't get arrested. The person will get arrested. But when a judge is going to make the decision as to whether to post bail or not, the judge would then consider if the person was a danger risk to the community or a flight risk, as they've always done. And if they find that the person is a danger or a flight risk, I mean, they're not going to let them go. That's according to the verbiage here. They won't let them go. If the person is not considered, sort of a flight risk or this or that, whereas before they would have posted bail and the person would have had to pony up the money, in this case, the cash bail system will be done and the person will be able to be on their own recognizance, until the trial. Yeah, man. So what you think?
That can go a lot of ways. Like you said, we got to see, but I'm going to throw a couple scenarios out there. So on one hand, you could have judges continuing to claim that everybody's a flight risk that's African American, and now you don't even have the option of cash bail. I don't think people are paying attention to that. Also, if it seems like there's sort of a scare tactic maneuver in there to say, oh, what about the person who commits aggravated murder or assault, and they can get out? And it's like, yeah, but majority of the cases won't be that. The majority that may
Right.
happen, but majority of the cases will probably be what they are now, which are nonviolent offenses, which may be robberies, things of that nature, because those are what makes up, in drug crimes, those are what makes up the vast majority of African American inmates anyway. So these are the people who will really not be held in jail for years pending, marijuana trials. So I think the idea that them letting out 400 criminals, even, yeah, okay, if they were assured to be 400 institutionalized, convicted murderers, or I mean, not convicted, but accused murderers, I mean, then maybe you can say, yeah, it's going to be chaos. But it just goes into the stereotype that everybody who goes to jail is a criminal, right?
Well,
I think
yeah,
it's just a lot of layers to it to say like what will really be the outcome of that. It could be various things depending on how it actually plays out and what is the political tone to why they would want people to be opposed of it. Because if they want people to be opposed of it, in my opinion, I'm saying, well, maybe it's good in there, but they don't want you to see the good, so they're going to pinpoint the bad and overemphasize it. Or if they're trying to make it sound all peaches and cream, or like it sounds very good, then maybe it's some bad in there that they don't want you to see. So it will take some more time to look at it and develop and see how it will actually impact the community before just exaggerating details to say that this is automatically going to be the wild wild west, because Chicago is already wild in that sense. But I guess we'll just have to see, at least according to the media.
yeah, man. Well, the thing is, everybody that would get out under this new system could already be out if they had the money. So here's the thing. If they let out 400 people, that means those 400 people are being held because they couldn't post bail.
Mhm.
Had they had the money to post bail, they would be out anyway.
Mhm.
So already a judge had said, presumably the judge said, well, yeah, if you can post bail, then you can go. And so therefore the people are there because they couldn't post bail, not because of the severity of their crime. It's not
Right.
like a judge was like, oh, you committed an aggravated murder. And so, therefore you can't be released to society. But
Mhm.
now this act comes along and now you're going to set these convicted people free. That's not the case. These
Right.
people are not technically convicted serving sentences in that sense, based on, what I read from the proposals here, is that it's just doing away with the cash bail system.
Mhm.
So if someone would have been free had they had the money, they would be free now. So it won't be a difference in the severity of crimes that makes people eligible to be in society again.
Mhm.
There's plenty
Right.
of people that do things that can afford to get out, and they're out, but nobody says anything about them because it's not flagshipped as some
Mhm.
new looming purge on the horizon. So
Right. No, that's a good point to clarify. So I think in that case, like that sounds like something that could definitely be utilized for good. If the black community and the leaders really got together to see how that could be beneficial and capitalize off such a bill, I think that can turn out to be a good thing.
yeah. Well, I think, bro, it's a piecemeal solution, a band-aid. A
Hmm.
band-aid does stop bleeding, you know, but it's not healing.
Hmm.
So I think that the reason by and large a lot of our people are victimized by a cash bail system in the first place, which, the system that encourages cops to trump up charges and cities and municipalities to just throw a bunch of charges on people, spike the bail up, and then just hold them indefinitely, sort of as a leverage and a tactic. The reason we're particularly vulnerable to that is because we don't have any wealth. We don't have generational wealth, and we don't have the means to sort of free ourselves, and not only just in the financial sense, but I mean it goes across the spectrum when you talk about wealth. I think a lot of things are relative to reparations, and I know that the big R word we touch on often here, but we're just not in a position. We're always in a vulnerable position. And so doing away with the cash bail system may help in the instance that someone gets accused or wrongfully accused, and now they're either going to spend months in jail or not. But it doesn't solve the problem of why, will that lessen the burden ultimately of those of us that get caught in school to prison pipelines and are caught up in systems and are forced to sort of make underworld decisions, to make ends meet, and a lot of these other issues that are, part of a larger canopy of problems. Yeah, man, what you got on that, bro?
Yeah, man, I think overall you absolutely right. It is definitely not first of all, we are always in a vulnerable situation. I do think we have a level of certain things that we need to focus on doing to better ourselves just as a community, as a people. But we are always in a vulnerable position, and that is always going to be a barrier until we find a way to overcome that, if that makes sense. And I think that when we hear about things like this, this is more of a band-aid solution is not, it's not healing, as you said. And we don't always want to just take breadcrumbs and chew on those for 10 years and get some more breadcrumbs, chew on that for a while. Like at some point we want to have something that can significantly impact our communities where we can actually start to do better and be in a better position. But just to focus on kind of some of the things that we touched on today as a whole, from the queen and the delusional people who mourn the death of somebody who wreaked havoc on their nation, and the sex trafficking, to doing away with these systems. All of these decisions and all of these things are being um, pushed on the black people as focal points, and we have to start stepping back and being in charge of our own agenda of what we take in, our own media, like what's important to us as individuals, and not being so caught up in the world, because we know the world is not thinking about us. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on what the world is talking about and how that impacts us, and they give us the talking points of what's important to us. And I think we got to step back from that. So that's just kind of my take on everything that we touched on, is that these are all good topics. I think we should have healthy conversations about them, but we do have to look for better solutions and put in our own priorities ahead of everybody else's, like people do to us, if we really want to see significant change.
Facts, man. I think that's a good note to end it on. Step back, take a breather, unplug from the matrix, people.
Yeah.
Facts. Well, hey, people, my people, keep watching, keep tuning in. And we're gonna keep bringing it. We don't give a damn what your algorithm says.
No, yeah, just keep dropping them, man. And check out the other pages, the Dope Nation.
Well, all right. With that, we out. Peace.
Peace.